Here's Gunnar again. I didn't do any updates yesterday, and I don't know what happened. I just forgot about it, I guess. But anyway, I'm back here now, and it's cold in Lima. It's cold at night. It's about probably around 15 centigrades or so, but it's really damp, and there's obviously no central heating in the houses, so you can see I'm all sort of um, dressed up here at night. I usually put this hoodie on as well, but I don't want to scare you here on the video. So I just took it down. Anyway, today is the last day of the quarantine here in Lima. And it means that it's been sort of a semi-quarantine the last 3 weeks or so. We have been able to go out for some recreation. So I've done some runs, I've done some local birding, but the we're not allowed to go any further than 3 kilometers from our houses, and yeah, and not to abuse of the of letting us actually go out. I have pretty much stuck to that. Maybe I've done a little bit longer than just an hour, but anyway. And I've done these free guiding a few days of the week for people in their near parks. I went out today, but I didn't get anyone coming with me, but I went out birding in the park. And I got my last June bird. I have been trying to see how many birds I could get in June with this 3 kilometer diameter. And they're not a whole lot, but I got in total 38 species. And the last one was the Cinereous Conebill. And it's usually a quite common bird. And it was almost to an extent that I went in this big park. I had already sort of noted down 22 species. And I could not for the world find this Cinereous Conebill. So I was thinking, maybe there are altitudinal migrants, something, a common bird that I usually don't really pay much attention to. All of a sudden, I'm feeling that I'm discovering something about it, right? But in the very, very end, I actually saw one. So maybe, I don't know if that sort of breaks the hypothesis altogether, or maybe it's sort of a little bit altitudinal migrant. Another bird that I was looking for that I've seen in the same park, this is the Olivar park. This have some 400-year olives in San Isidro San Isidro municipality. It's about, almost exactly 3 kilometers as the Cinereous Conebill flies from where I live. And another bird I was looking for there is the Pied-crested Tit-Tyrant. That's almost an endemic to Peru. Yeah? I think it goes also down to I think it's like northern Chile, if I'm not mistaken, but it's practically an endemic. And that usually we see in the Santa Eulalia Canyon, a little bit higher up the valley. But we have seen, the only place I've seen it here in Lima is actually in that park. And we went birding there in, well, it must have been like in December. Yeah, I think like December, it was sort of almost getting summer, becoming summer. And then it was pretty easy to find. And today I was doing playback. I was whistling the pygmy owl. I got a lot of activity going with the birds that were around there, but no pied-crested tit-tyrant. So that one may be an altitudinal migrant coming down from the Andes just in the summer. We have a few other examples that I know of course, which is the Peruvian sheartail, this beautiful hummingbird with a long sort of spiky tail, so long streamers, white streamers in the tail, a real tiny, tiny hummingbird. And the Peruvian sheartail does that. So it comes down here in the summer, and we don't see it at all in the winter. It's gone. So that is a bird that actually does that altitudinal migrant along the slope here of the Andes. Lima is situated about, this on a bluff, sort of looking out over the Pacific, and it's about maybe 70 meters above sea level, more or less, around where I live. So it goes from, say, 50 meters up to about 100 meters, sort of on a gentle slope in sort of most of urban Lima, the sort of the metropolitan Lima. And there's no hills, right? So it's rather flat, but it's like an even slope. So yeah, so we were practically at sea level, right? Anyway, so the last day now, and then tomorrow I'm actually able to move around, and so I've announced a trip for tomorrow, and that trip is at Pantanos de Villa, which is about 3 kilometers from here. So no, it's about 7 kilometers from here. And to go there, we actually need to go by car. So I have prepared my car today, our van for Colibri Expeditions. And we have a few people signed up. And tomorrow is the first time I'm actually doing this sort of local guiding with these new Peruvian birders for some pay. And yeah, I don't want anyone to actually get used to the what I'm charging. I'm charging less than $7 per person, so that's the pay I'm getting. But the idea is, to get people motivated, and if I get 5 people, then at least that's our groceries for the day, or yeah, slightly, a little bit more than the groceries. It barely sort of pays for that. I also give the transport, of course, so it'll be some additional money on that as well. But that's just another $7 per person back and forth. So it's not a big investment that people will have to do a little bit of birding. But we'll see how it goes. I'll just, I'd like to get some people into the game. And I've been doing a lot of free guiding now the last couple of days. So I think it's fair to charge a little bit. But Pantanos de Villa is a fantastic wetland. It's the best wetland we have close to Lima. It's a Ramsar site, so it's of international importance. It has huge numbers of Franklin gulls that come and winter and pass through there. Also, at times you can see up 20,000 Franklin gulls easy at this one spot, right? Other times it's sort of more or less between 5 to 10,000 birds, And when the lockdown started, they were all over the place. So now I'm going to come back to Pantanos de Villa tomorrow, and there will not be probably not a single Franklin gulls. So it's quite a contrast from last time I was there, if you want. Some birds that you can see there, one of the best ones is the many-colored rush tyrant. That's the siete colores in Spanish. A very colorful bird with lots of colors, 7 colors according to the Peruvians. There are also a lot of ducks. And you can see a great grebe there also, which is really very, very large, beautiful grebe. And there are, well, we're on the coast, so obviously the Inca terns will be close by, usually over the sea. There's one little problem, though, with the park is that they have not officially opened. So whether we get access or not, we won't get access to the reserve proper, because for that it needs to be open. So, but we should be able to stand on the border and look into the reserve. So that's kind of the idea. And to get to the beach, you have to go through this gated community. And now we don't really know what the regulations of the gated community are, if they will allow us our passage or not. However, there is a sort of a, I'm not sure if it's in the Constitution, but it's basically a right for people to be able to go to the beach, which has actually 2 problems here. One problem is that you the reserve per se doesn't cover the beach. So it means that we can get to the beach, but it's a problem for conservation, because then there's a lot of birds that are resting on the beach and nesting on the beach as well, and they don't have any protection, even though it's only like from the shore to this lagoon, which is the reserve. It's only, say, 30-40 meters or something like that. It's ridiculous. So 30 yards in, and then starts the reserve. And then during the time when the birds, these huge flocks of Franklin gulls, for instance, and even we have breeding American oyster catchers, the South American Pacific race that is along the Humber Current that breeds there. There are killdeers, and sometimes there are plovers resting there also, semi-palmated plovers as well. And so it's important that the birds don't get disturbed all the time. However, there are people on the beach, of course, and there have been horses and four-wheel motorbikes, and just a lot of activity. Now that has been controlled to some extent, and even though it's not within the reserve, the reserve people have now put out signs, etc., and made it more difficult to actually access the beach with the motorbikes, and so so that's a good thing. Now, so since it's a gated community, we don't know whether we can pass with a car. So maybe they will tell us that we cannot pass with a car, but we could walk in. So we'll see about that tomorrow. Another problem here is that obviously when there is no activity, there have been a lot of sort of feral dogs in the area. So that's an additional conservation problem. Okay, what else? Well, I've been listening to, remember I told you a couple of episodes ago that I was on this podcast. It's called The Birding Life, I think, or A Birding Life. It's by Adam Cruickshank from South Africa. And he has this great podcast, and he's now on like episode 11 or something. He's very diligent. Every week there's a new podcast coming over. So as my running has started again, I've downloaded a few of his podcasts into my iPhone. So I'm listening to that when I'm running. And I've been listening to, I was listening to one, and I wanted to mention this one for you because it's really good. And it's with Mark Anderson, who is the CEO of the South African BirdLife. And I was impressed by the work they're doing. They're doing some fantastic work. They are very much both a conservation organization, but also a very birder-friendly conservation organization, right? And so they have all these conservation projects all over South Africa and also in neighboring countries, doing great work. They training guides, in the local reserves. They have like a guiding school, can you imagine? And they fabricating bird guides in South Africa, and obviously a lot also from the bird guides from the black community, so they can become guides within the reserves, etc. Otherwise, the hobby bird watching, Adam told me this, so now that we have all this movement with Black Lives Matter and so forth, it's still a very, very white sort of sport or hobby in South Africa. So there's very few South African black birders. There are many guides, of course, but there are not that many birders per se that actually have it as a hobby and not sort of professionally working with birds, right? So that is something they're sort of looking at addressing as well. But anyway, it was a great podcast, and one thing that sort of really got me interested, they're arranging this immense cruise. Yeah, BirdLife South Africa are doing a fundraising cruise, and I think they have like 2,000 beds or something. It's ridiculous on this ship, and they're going to Marion, which is like an island that is halfway between the southern tip of South Africa to Antarctica, and it's South African territory. And well, guess what? Something happened. We got a pandemic coming. And so now they have almost everything settled. I think the departure of this trip is on Sunday, the 24th of January. Yeah, supposedly. But whether they will actually get, all the ducks in a row, that means, first of all, they need permission, of course, to gather that many people on a boat. That may be the first problem. Secondly, I'm sure there will be international people coming in as well, not only from South Africa, because this is like a chance in a lifetime, and there will be a lot of prominent guides on the ship as well. Even Peter Harrison, the seabird expert, is going to be on the ship, participating as a guide and lecturer. And Trevor Hardecker, a friend of mine that was here in Peru, he's going to be there as well. And so it just sounds absolutely awesome. And they're still selling spaces to this cruise. It is likely, but certainly not sure, it is likely that it will be postponed. But nevertheless, if you have the chance, sign up. It sounds like a great adventure, but do have the flexibility that it may be actually a later date when everything is sort of okay for operating. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But it just sounds absolutely amazing. I want to go. I couldn't afford it under these circumstances. Maybe I can go as a guide, right? So we'll see about that. Anyway, having said that, let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to mention? Oh, yeah. So the Australia and New Zealand trips that I was mentioning the other day, they are, I'm still working on the Australia program. It's coming together great, but everyone there that I'm working with in Australia, they're telling me, that it's very unlikely that we're actually going to be open for January. It's most likely going to be like mid next year when we are letting people from North America and Europe come to Australia. And I think it seems like more or less a consensus all over New Zealand and Australia. Having said that, though, I am still putting up those trips for January, but I'm doubling the dates. So the dates will also be in the same dates, 2022. So have a look at the programs. I think the Australia program will probably be up tomorrow or the day after. I'm just waiting for the last descriptions from the people that I'm working with. And it's going to be a fantastic, great trip for 5 days, including Cairns, Brisbane, and Sydney. And we're going for all the special bird families, all the endemics we can see on the way, and all, lyre birds and birds, rifle bird, which is a bird of paradise. We get looking for the honey eaters, and there's bowerbirds and southern cassowary, and you name it. It's just on all these beautiful parrots. The parrots are quite common, but it's just amazing. The Kakatuas and the Rosellas. So it's going to be a really great trip with lots of different birds, and we're using the best local operators. And since it's only 5 days, it's not going to be overly expensive, but you're going to see a lot in those 5 days. And that's going to be some hardcore birding. Now, the more softcore birding that we are doing in right after this part. So that will be 4 days in Tasmania, and it's going to be 1 day in Melbourne. And that's also your Australian mammals trip with the Tasmanian devil, the kangaroo, koalas, platypus, and echidna, and then lots of birds, of course, getting all the Tasmanian endemics, plus, yeah, some what's it called? The rufous bristlebird, I think, is an endemic bird family that you can find near Melbourne. So we're looking for that as well. So looking very much forward to having that trip up on the Seven Wonders Birding webpage. But for the time being, still a few more days, and we don't know whether the trip will run in January, but go ahead and book. It's going to be a better price if you do it this January. And if we can't run it, well, in that case, we'll just sort of do it next year. And it's open to start paying deposits and stuff like that. Anyway, that's all I had to say for now. So I'll see you tomorrow after. Yeah, I'll be right after my birding tomorrow. So have a good night. See you tomorrow. Bye.